Good evening, good evening. Hi, my name is Anita Kishore. With Rich and Sally, I am a part of the LifeSci NYC Internship Program. Sharon is unable to join us this evening, but we have some awesome panelists who have been in your shoes to share with us a little bit about their experiences, not only maybe as an intern, but also nearly all of them, most all of them also have full-time roles that they are working in. And we may hear about some of the things that really worked for them, what made them very successful. And maybe we'll even get a little candid and hear about some mistakes. So things that maybe didn't quite work. And so hopefully in their wisdom, they can share with us how to avoid making mistakes. So what we'll do tonight is I'll kick off with asking each of the panelists to just introduce themselves. And then we'll go into a few prepared questions that I have. And then in typical format, we'll turn it over to you at about half an hour or 35 minutes past the hour to see what questions you have. If you have burning questions and you want to ask them right away, feel free. You can ask your questions in a couple of different ways. If you would like to raise your virtual hand, that is one way. If you would like to type your question in the chat window, that's another way. If you raise your hand on the screen, I may not see you. So please don't just raise your hand and just hope that I will call on you. But Rich or Sally, if you do see that happen, please let me know and we will grab questions as we see them. So any questions before we get started? We are recording this. If you didn't already catch that when you first logged in, we're recording this conversation and we have spotlighted our amazing panelists, right? Let's do it. So panelists, I'd love for you if you could just take 1 or 2 minutes maximum and introduce yourself. So if you could just share with us where you went to college or grad school, your major, and when you graduated, or if you're still a student, when you expect to graduate. And if you could tell us not only about your academic history, but also where you work. So your title, the company where you interned, and the kind of work that you're doing now. And to kick us off, I'll start with our repeat intern, George, who's been around, done several internships, and is just a great friend of the program. Let's start with George.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you at the event. So my name is George Kanafati. I did my undergrad at City College of CUNY. I graduated in 2020 with a bachelor's in biomedical engineering. And then I got a master's degree from Columbia University and also in biomedical engineering, but specialized in neuroengineering. Now I'm a data analyst at NYU Langone. I'm working in translational brain research in anesthesiology. And during my time in LifeSci, I interned at Flexure Power, formerly Beaumbuton, and I worked as a product development intern.
Awesome. Thank you, George. And by the way, for any, we'll do a formal introduction of all our panelists, but for any participants who are just listening in, if you would like to type in your name, your university, and where you are interning or where you have interned, we'd love to see that in the chat. So if you're just, if you're listening in, please feel free to type that in. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Janvi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Janvi Chetal. I did my my master's in Pace University, and I pursued forensic science. I graduated December of 2021, and I currently work as a scientist at Thermo Fisher. And during my internship at LifeSci, I was working as a research and development intern with Grid Bio. So yeah.
Very cool. A coveted R&D internship. All right. We'll go over to Josh.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all tonight. My name's Joshua Fleishman. I'm a 5th out of 6-year program for a doctorate of pharmacy at St. John's University. And last year I was lucky enough to have an internship through LifeSci NYC with Stellate Therapeutics, which is a gut-brain axis neuro company. And I was working with them mostly in data analytics, but it really evolved into a lot of chemistry and a lot of pharmacology.
Cool. And thank you for Joshua. I'm sorry. I just inadvertently abbreviated your name. All right. Sabora, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Sabora. I graduated December 2021 at Pace University, and I majored in bio, and I had a minor in psychology and neuroscience. I actually did an internship through Life Science last summer. So summer of 2021 as a research assistant actually at Sequential Skin. And then they offered me a part-time position during winter time as a research associate. And now they gave me a promotion. I'm still working with them as a lab manager. And we're an international company. So we have a branch in Singapore, London, and in New York. So pretty much I got very lucky into actually helping manage the branch in New York. So right now, I'm very thankful to Life Science because that's how I got to introduce to Sequential Skin, and I'm still working here, and I actually am like really grateful for working for Sequential.
Thank you. And lab manager roles are hard to come by, so we're going to dig into that a little bit later on. Bart, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. It's really an honor, and I'm really glad to be able to share my experiences. My name is Bart Halibart. I'm currently a rising senior at Hunter College. I'm going to graduate in May 2023. I started off my experience with LifeSci at Columbia University Irving Medical Center in 2021 as a research intern. I finished that in the summer, and then I continued on into the spring of this year where I finished my honors thesis with Columbia. So I'm really happy about that. And this summer, I'm interning at Deerfield Management, which is a healthcare hedge fund, and I'm a summer fellow there.
Great stuff. Thank you. So all of you are working in jobs, and many of you were actually successful in converting your internship, either converting your internship into a full-time role or using your internship as a launching pad for your next role. So what I'd like to do is start off with a little bit about just, your internship. Why did you apply, and did school really help you prepare you for the internship? So to answer that, I'm going to ask George and Sabora to take this one.
Sure. So the reason I applied to LifeSci is because I wanted to advance my industry experience. Also to grow my network and to ultimately strengthen my resume. I already had a year or 2 years of experience with another internship when I applied to LifeSci. However, that experience wasn't really fulfilling what I wanted to learn in the engineering space. So LifeSci seemed like a really great opportunity. Also, it was very interesting to learn that LifeSci was part of the initiative to grow the biotech space in New York City and kind of compete with the other cities in the US. So, the novelty of that was pretty exciting and just seemed like a really good fit.
Great, thank you.
Yes, it's my turn now. Should I just go and answer? Okay, so actually so the reason why I applied, starting with that, so I was very much into skincare, and it started for me actually as a passion, as a hobby. So I just created a blog for Instagram, and that's how I think my resume got why my people that I work for, my boss actually, he liked that fact. And I remember when they called me for that I was selected and they wanted to have an interview with me, was specifically because I had a skincare blog, because they thought it was a really good fit to somebody who has a background in science and also is interested into something more creative. So I think that has always helped me throughout the whole internship. Experience that I had before, I actually had a little bit of experience in university-based mostly. So I got lucky. I got lucky and I had 2 publications, even though I was still doing my undergrad. with my professor, which were mostly in microbiology. And now we get to work with skin microbiome with bacteria. So it's a perfect fit for what I'm doing now. So I feel that those 2 points, previous research that I had and the skincare blog, that really made the difference for me.
So Sabora, do you still maintain your blog, and is that something you'd be willing to type into the chat where we can check it out?
Yeah, of course. It's not very, I don't have too many followers, but hopefully getting there one day soon.
Hey, this is the chance to share what you all do. So feel free to type it in. Hearing what you said, and I think maybe also what Josh mentioned when he mentioned the gut, skin, gut, brain, and I don't remember the third part of it. Okay, but
skin.
yeah, Dr. Whitney Bowe is someone who I know just from my from college, and she's a rock star scientist and dermatologist, and has just launched her own products. So anyway, let's keep this back focused on you guys. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Sabora, did I?
It's okay. We just had actually a research project with Dr. Whitney Bowe when we got to test all of her products, which was very cool.
That's cool. That is very cool. Awesome. Hashtag impressed. Okay. So let's keep going here. Josh and Janvi, how did your degree prepare you, or how has it prepared you for your internship and your internship? So we'll start with Josh first and then Janvi.
Sure. So I like to think of the formal education as kind of like a foundation, because it teaches you all of the building blocks, but it's really once you get into the real world where you start to see, well, what happens when I put all these bricks together in this combination? What happens in this combination? That you really begin to learn about how science really works. So on one aspect, it teaches you how things work to begin with, but you're only really starting to learn the education of how the real world works. So you definitely need a good foundation to actually succeed in the real world. So that's what I learned from it.
Awesome.
I actually agree with Joshua. There's a lot, when you go to university, there's a very strong knowledge base that is provided to you when you attend classes, and just there's a lot of reading that is involved. You just learn a lot. It's like a whole learning spectrum. But when you actually start working and start being in the lab, and when things actually start going wrong in the lab, you realize how to navigate through it, and it just kind of prepares you for the big world, the real world, and things like that. So in terms of schoolwork or degree, there was like a knowledge base that I was given. There was just like theoretical knowledge, but a lot of practical knowledge came as I gained that experience with the company.
Great. So there's technical knowledge that you all had that you applied from school or from your own personal interests, but then there was that real world experience that you all got from your internship. Now, I'm going to ask Bart a slightly different question, because, and I'm interested and intrigued because your background's in biochem, but your internships are pretty different areas. So one was more kind of research oriented, I believe, and the other is more finance. Could you just tell us a little bit about what maybe some of the how the internships are related to your degrees, or maybe not related to your degree?
I would say the research one was very much related to my degree. It was focused heavily on kidney genetics, and that's what I did my honors thesis in. And it was interesting to take biochemistry class simultaneously with the internship in the spring and working on my honors thesis. The knowledge really was building my honors thesis. So as I learned new things in class, I was able to incorporate them into my research and into my honors thesis. In terms of the finance internship that I'm doing at Deerfield Management right now, it's very humbling how little knowledge I have both on the finance and science side. There are teams of people who spent decades in the healthcare system as PhDs, as MDs, who really have a very deep and expert understanding of the science. And you'd think that if you have these foundations, you'd be able to contribute somehow as well to determine whether a startup has a, let's say, good chances of succeeding with the science that they're basing. But I, as an intern, don't. And so that was very humbling. That being said, the skills that I've gained in my other research experience, internships and in class mainly of just doing internet research and reading papers, have definitely helped me gain a better understanding of the finance aspect of healthcare.
It's really well said. Humbling experience, but we're all here to learn. So I encourage all of our panelists to think about, is there a time where you faced kind of a, it sounds like an interview question, but it's kind of a challenging experience that you may have had in an internship and what you may have learned from it. We'll come back to the challenge in a little bit. I want to focus right now, though, on your full-time role. And I believe most people here have full-time roles. I think Josh is still in a degree program. But let's go to just let's start with Janvi. Were you able to move from, let's see, it was formerly Grit Bio, right? FREZENT to now to Thermo Fisher. So we'll start with you.
I actually, so my internship with Grit Bio was amazing, and it kind of moved towards the winter of 2021. So that was amazing. I got a longer experience, something that I really hoped for. I also was hoping to convert that into a full-time, which I did. But at this point, when I just graduated, I kind of wanted to venture into, maybe you could call it like a more commercial side of research, like a more commercial industry where it's a huge lab. There is I never had that kind of exposure. Even previously, I was in academia, and even in this, it was not exactly academia, but it was still in development. Whereas my current role, I'm more on the testing post development into manufacturing. So that was something I was really keen to venture into because I just wanted to see if I actually liked it or not, to be quite honest, which surprisingly I do, thankfully I do. But it's been great. That switch was a little tough because it's very different fields. Like my previous job, I worked solely with cell lines, and now I don't even touch cell lines. So it's a very different thing for me to kind of, switch into. But it's been a kind of a smooth switch, but with some humps in the middle, for sure.
Wow, that's very useful. And Janvi, if I can indulge in just one more question around that, because it's an interesting transition, right? To go from more academic research to something more manufacturing related. So that's doing something at scale. Is there one experience that you had that was that surprised you when you moved into the more commercial related experience or commercial work?
There are a couple of things, I think. Number one is just it's very fast paced, and it depends. Like when you are in academia, it is fast paced. You still have deadlines, but resources are much difficult to actually find and try to utilize all your resources. You need to it's very tough to kind of find those resources. Whereas in this side, the resources are just there for you. They're always available, and your deadlines, I feel like, are slightly easier to push compared to in academia. As far as my experience goes, I haven't had a very pressurizing situation in this role where, my deadline is at this particular date and I have to reach it. There is a slight leeway involved because there are a lot of people above you, below you, around you, on whom that deadline is dependent on as well. So it's not just you solely that is responsible for that deadline. Whereas in academia, it's your project, it is you completely that is responsible for it. So I think there's pros and cons to both at this point.
That's great. That's actually really useful to get clarity on, because I think when we come from an academic environment, we're just so used to our own project and what matters to us. And we don't always understand that cross-functional relationships or cross-functional collaborators are quite important, and that what you do affects somebody else and vice versa. Thank you for bringing that up. George, I want to go to you because I think what you're doing is pretty far afield from your engineering background, but I'm guessing there's some similarities too. So can you tell us a little about your full-time role?
Yeah, so my full-time role is very related to neural engineering and my master's degree. So what I do now is I work in So like I mentioned before, it's translational brain research and it's in anesthesiology, but that's a little bit misleading. My project specifically is in brain-computer interfaces, and the part that's related to anesthesiology is in pain. So the way I like to explain my project is the same way that there's DBS now for Parkinson's. The end goal of my PI's research work is to have a implantable device that is able to help chronic pain patients receive therapy from their pain as an alternative to things like opioids and other stimulations that have tried to target the same things but don't work as well. And it is actually pretty different from definitely my undergrad. When I was at City College, I did know that I wanted to do neural engineering, but I didn't have the opportunity to get the background simply because I think every biomedical engineering program in each school has their own strengths. And in some ways, neural engineering wasn't as threaded into the curriculum as, let's say, mechanical engineering or tissue engineering. So my master's really helped to solidify that. And for timeline, I did LifeSci when I was in undergrad, and then I transitioned into full-time at Flextra Power. I worked as a product development engineer for a few months while I completed my senior year. And then I left my role at Flextra Power to do my master's. And then that was kind of like a transition. And actually, I would say that there are some ties between what I did at Flextra Power. So because it was a startup, I had many different tasks, and it was quite fluid in terms of what we were focused on at the moment. But near the end of my time at Flextra Power, I was helping to develop a data analysis pipeline. And for those who don't know, Flextra Power is a company in the wearable sensor space, specifically in insole technology for detecting the development of diabetic foot ulcers through temperature. And it doesn't sound very related to what I'm doing now, but actually in terms of creating machine learning pipelines and analyzing matrices of data, yeah, it's actually very similar. So, and also similar to Janvi's point is that I kind of went the other direction. At Flextra Power, I was in industry, but now I'm in academia. I'm kind of back in academia, and like Janvi said, that has its pros and cons. But I'm super grateful to be here. It's like very related to my master's degree, what I learned in neural engineering there, and it feels like a really good fit.
That's really helpful to understand what some of the similarities and differences were. And just as you were speaking and thinking about what you and Janvi are doing, it was kind of like, wow, I kind of wish we could fast forward to 15 years from now just to see what you all are doing, because I'm so curious to see where you're going to go. Who knows? But yeah. I think one of the things that I'm picking up on, is that when I speak to senior leaders who work at companies now, they might be startups, they may be founders, and like you all, they got their start maybe in a startup or maybe in a larger company, but they keep, either doing new ideas, for example, innovation, research, R&D, or they may be figuring out how better to take a new idea and make it applicable in an engineering or manufacturing kind of way. So I kind of wish I had a crystal ball right now. On the other hand, sometimes I don't, because I don't want to even know sometimes what's going to happen next week. But I'm excited to see where you all go, and we'll come back to you too in a little bit to maybe even get some ideas about where you may be going, where you think you want to go next. All right, so I want to go to Josh. You're in a PharmD program, so how does it work for you to balance school and a job? just a quick starter.
Good question. I guess the best thing that I can really say about that is it's all about time management. You have to understand what type of obligations are your classes going to be pulling from you? When are your exams? When are your projects due? And at the same time, you have to have another calendar that says, okay, well, when do I need to get this project done for work? And what do I need to get done in the future? So it's really just the art of balancing your schedule, knowing what people require from you, and making sure that you can always exceed expectations.
Impressive. And are you also working during the school year? Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
so I'm really lucky that Stellate Therapeutics, after having my 10-week internship, they elected to keep me on part-time for indefinitely until I graduate. And then it's really up to my decision if I want to stay or if I want to explore, do new things. But yeah, it's up to that, yes.
Cool. Thank you. All right, Sabora, I have a question for you about being a lab manager, because this is a role that we see in other cities, for example, Boston, something that, or we're in places where the industry is maybe just a little more mature than New York City. So what do you do as a lab manager? And how does, yeah, let's just start there. What do you do?
So pretty much we have employees that we have in our lab. So I pretty much make sure to order all the lab equipment that we need, make sure to assign projects to everyone. So that my day at work looks like I'm going to come to work, I'm going to say hi to everyone, and everyone's going to kind of check with me what they're going to do during the day. And then I'm going to make an inventory, see what's missing in the lab, make some orders. And then on the other hand, I get to do a little bit of marketing as well. So, because it's a startup, and I believe startups are a really good way for you to learn more, and they also encourage you more. Let's say I would always ask if I had an idea, and I would always take initiative in the beginning, and I would even ask for a promotion. Let's say, or sometimes I would ask my boss, who was before running all the lab management duties, I would ask him, can I try to do that? I could help you with this. And he saw that I was ready to the point when I could do it myself without his supervision. So he agreed that I was able to actually take care of the lab pretty much, and all the daily routine that happens inside the lab.
Very cool. Something I'm hearing Sabora say, and also Josh, is there's planning, there is management involved, time management. I'm also hearing a lot about communicating with others. Is that something that has ever been a challenge in your organization, Sabora?
I believe in the beginning, it would be personally for me, since I'm somebody that sometimes confuses a coworker with a friend. And I sometimes might be, I like to treat people as if they were my friends, because I believe everyone, when they come to work, they should not be feeling stressful. They should just be feeling happy, so they can be more efficient at work. So I would always ask them and make sure like how their day was going, if they wanted an early day and I could do the rest of the job. If they were having family issues, I wanted to build that connection, but sometimes people might take advantage of that. And sometimes I would find myself doing the lab work more than I was supposed to do. And I had to find a balance between me knowing how to communicate better to people, being more professional, and kind of not confuse that much of friendship. Because I was used more into academia, being in a university, so working with my friends. So coming into a real life job, that for me was a hard time keeping that formal posture and talking to people. But I'm still learning. So it's been a learning experience and still going on.
That makes a lot of sense. When we're early in our career, and even when we're later in our career, it can be hard to draw boundaries. And you'll hear people talking about that. I work with executives. They have the same kind of challenges as well. So paying attention to that, even early on in your career, is really smart. So Bart, your roles are quite different. We talked a little bit about that before, but given that you work now in this humbling environment in finance, I'm curious about, because everyone has mentioned collaborating with others and communication, in what ways do communication or collaboration show up for you in your current role at Deerfield?
I would say not as much as I expected, actually. From what I've spoken with people that did the internship in the past and that are doing it right now, it is a lot of individual work. That being said, we do have team projects and we do try to come together, but the company on its own does not go out of its way to provide us with resources to connect. This also isn't easier because the internship is fully remote with a few office days during the summer. So it's difficult to still organize and meet over Zoom. That being said, as I said, there are groups and I am part of one group, and sharing ideas with each other is definitely very valuable, especially when I'm someone that came from a science background and there's others who came from a purely accounting or marketing background and they're trying to break into the field. So part of science is explaining to others in layman terms and in simple terms what's going on. And so that's what I'm doing to my colleagues that are in finance. But on the other hand, they're explaining to me their concepts in finance that are more complex for me. And so we're trying to find a middle ground. And that really does result in really interesting thoughts coming through us because we just connect different ideas together and it's really good.
Thanks for sharing that. That's I agree that it sounds a little bit surprising, but it sounds like it's just the nature of the way this particular internship maybe is set up, individual projects, the remote experience. So just going to offer to other panelists, participants who are here as well as panelists. If any of you has a question and you want to direct that question to a particular person, please go ahead and do that either in the chat or use the reaction buttons to raise your virtual hand. I'm sure Rich has a question or two as well, but before we turn it over to open questions, what I want to do is pick up on where Bart left off. Bart, you said that it is a remote internship. You are working hard to build connections. I'm curious, we'll start with you, and then if you want to popcorn it over to another panelist, how has the alumni community supported you either during or after, let's say, your first internship?
That's a brilliant question. I think for this internship that I'm doing at Deerfield right now, we at Hunter had a get-together with people from the consulting industry that have done my internship, and I was able to ask them about questions about this. So they're extremely involved, extremely helpful. And of course, I encourage everyone to connect with me on LinkedIn, just so I have more followers, but also to give you advice if you have questions about the internship. So the alumni network is something that's definitely helpful, but also staying in touch with people back from Colombia and putting initiative to make a conversation with everyone or at least one person each day was very good in developing these networks and staying in touch and staying in the loop. George, what are your thoughts?
So when I completed my time at LifeSci, I kept in touch mainly by participating in events and I guess serving as a representative for LifeSci, and that has been a pretty rewarding experience. And in general, even if I didn't participate entirely with like alumni, like other students, I think that studying in Columbia Biomedical Engineering or now working at NYU Langone, it still feels like part of the same community because we're all kind of on the same mission to. We're all following our own interests career-wise, but we're also kind of like pushing biotech in New York City, which isn't it's a pretty big deal. So it still feels kind of like a remote connection, if you will. It's like we all know that we're doing great things, and it's rewarding to just know that you're part of it. And a lot of us started through LifeSci, and it's like a shared route.
Thank you. Can you popcorn it over to someone?
Yeah, popcorn Janvi.
I also started, my first real world job through LifeSci. So that was always a great thing to have. And I also know that these kind of events, whether it's this kind of event or like other like pizza parties or whatever, there's always like a networking opportunity. And it's very interesting to know how under one roof there's so many different opportunities, people doing so many different things. So I think that's really nice to have and cherish to a certain level. And whoever I speak to, I do try to mention, there's always a conversation, oh, where do you work, how's your background, what did you do. So there's always this statement of, oh, there's this thing called LifeSci, they have a lot of opportunities, not just bio related, you should definitely check it out and stuff. So it's always nice to kind of share my experience and hopefully motivate other people to go through this. And I will turn it over to Joshua.
I mean, I don't want to exaggerate, or I don't want to sound like I'm exaggerating, but LifeSci is probably one of the biggest changes that has happened in my life. And I mean it in the best way possible. Since I took my internship with Stellate last year, I have grown into so many new places that I didn't think were possible within a year. I met so many people in different aspects of science that I did not think I'd have the opportunity to meet. So whenever I speak to an undergrad or someone who's in a lower year of my program and they say, hey, I'm free this summer, do you have any recommendations as what I can do to push myself and really be the best I can be in my career? The first thing that comes to mind is LifeSci. Because if it was able to get me to where I am within a year, imagine what it can get someone else within multiple years. It's really incredible. And I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity. And I'd like to popcorn it off to Sabora.
To just follow with what Joshua said, it's the same has happened for me as well. This year has been just incredible and sometimes unbelievable that I started just as an intern and now I'm very close. I'm very sure what I want to do with my career. And that's kind of like a hard thing to happen in life because you're always switching jobs, you're switching positions. And I consider myself lucky and grateful that I joined this community. In terms of joining the community, I haven't done such a good work into keeping in touch with everyone, but I'm here today, and hopefully I'll keep in touch with everyone and join the events. And also, actually, we have my friend that we work together now. She's part of the Life Science. That's I introduced her to Life Science, and she applied, and she was looking through the jobs, and she likes sequential, so she applied for that position as well. Yeah. So I'm always telling people every time that I see them confused about not knowing what to do with their life and even having a hard time finding a job, because it's really hard to find a job, especially if you're a student. So this is a great opportunity because you get to apply to more than one job that's like related to your major, especially if you're in STEM. So this is a great opportunity and people should know more about it actually.
Love this. Rich, I hope you are paying everyone appropriately after this for plugging the LifeSci NYC internship. That's a joke, by the way. Lots of LinkedIn profiles being shared in the chat, so please keep sharing those, making connections. If you have a different or preferred way of connecting with others, I know I directed you all to LinkedIn, but if you have other ways, if you want to type in an email address or a phone number, whatever it is that you feel comfortable with, feel free to do that. And we will take Rich's question.
Yeah, it's really picking up on what Janvi said in a little plug, but you mentioned the pizza party. I just want to make sure that everyone knows and has signed up. The pizza party is a week from tomorrow in Brooklyn Bridge Park. So we'd love to get together. We missed, it was the one event we were able to do last summer was the pizza party because it's outdoors. And so we're really excited to be doing it again. So if you haven't yet signed up, it's in the emails. I could even put a link in the chat. I would love for you to join us. Also calling on any current interns, if you have questions, if there are any situations you're dealing with at your internship, you're about halfway done right now, any guidance you might want, you've got the panel of experts from 5 program alumni as well as Anita. So now's your chance, raise your hand. And even though we're being recorded, I guess that's, you want to be somewhat sensitive, but if you want guidance, now's a good time.
Great, thanks, Rich. And I see a hand. And if anybody has a sensitive situation, you can feel free to type it in the chat, private message me, and I will gladly disguise your question.
We could also, if anyone wants, we could pause the recording if you you want to ask a question that you don't want to be on the record.
So please just let us know. So I see Margot and I see a question from Kat. So let's start with Margot.
Hi, I just wrote my question in the chat. Sorry, I wasn't sure which way we were going with that. Thanks everyone for your awesome introductions and your time. I was wondering, I wrote in the chat, but I'm really enjoying my internship this summer. Something I feel like I'm sort of missing is like working with data and the creative problem solving that everyone knows is both fun and a pain at the same time in lab, but I sort of miss it. And do you have any recommendations how to find this in a career? I started like working with like trying to learn data science sort of on an app, but any other suggestions as to how, I know there's no perfect career, but any recommendations you have, I would really appreciate. Thanks.
So I'm gonna start off. I'll just ask George if you wanna take a stab at this.
Yeah, first I'd like to clarify, what are you currently doing?
I work in very biological sciences, so I study malaria and I do very wet bench work. So I don't have much. I have like a dabbling in data science, but not really enough to justify a full career.
Right. I think one thing that comes to the top of my mind is if you see, as part of your work, if you see something that you, let's say like you're doing some kind of analysis, some kind of like assay or something that results, let's say in like, I don't know, viability count, something that comes to mind. Like if you think that you could turn that into some kind of reportable outcome, that would be useful for the lab, that you could turn into, let's say you could like write a Python script and present it to your direct manager. I think that would be a good way. Do you do anything like this already? Is that kind of part of your work already?
Not in lab or in my internship, so not
Okay.
specifically now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great idea. So thank you.
Yeah, it might be a little bit of a stretch because honestly, sometimes managers, you should stay on task and maybe it's not really relevant. But I've thought about doing it in the past, kind of like just it's because you want to do it, you want to do that data analysis, but it also could be useful. You could help to make your work more data driven, and I don't think that's random by any means. That's like a powerful method for any application.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
See, Josh, do you want to take a stab?
Yeah, so really great question. And the biggest way that I can think about answering it is that the first step you want to do is try and look at your data and find something you want to track. And once you find something you want to track, think about what do you want to learn from it. And that's going to be the best idea on how to push you towards incorporating data analytics into your wet work. Because specifically, if you know what you want to try and find out, then you can start bridging together about what tools do I need to learn to accomplish that outcome. So instead of sitting on an app and trying to learn about 10 different abstract fields of mathematics and all these different types of data analyses, having a really clearly defined focus and then working your way backwards is really going to pinpoint the exact steps you need to learn to push you towards completing a project, which hopefully will spawn many more.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joshua. And one quick add to both of those very good suggestions is once you have, if you have an idea, I recommend running it by your manager so that you're not doing something, to George's point, that is not necessarily what your manager wants you to be doing. So you can talk through it and say, hey, I'm really excited by this idea. And I think this could be, communicate the excitement and interest in doing that. But you want to be careful about how much time you're going to commit to a project that's not your primary project.
Sure, that makes sense.
I also
I
wanted
would
to
be
add,
oh, yeah.
sorry, I just wanted to also, something that came to mind is there's a YouTube channel. Well, there's a data science academy in New York City. I don't know the exact title, but it's something like that. New York City Data Science Academy, and they have courses which are paid and I think very expensive, but they post a lot on YouTube. They post a lot of tutorials in like Python, R, different languages and different applications, like let's say weather, things that are random, but sometimes from time to time I watch those videos, and you know, you pick up on small things that you could eventually like things that you didn't know before, or like ways to up your programming skills. And I think that would be pretty helpful, if not for like finding a project, but just in increasing your skills in general for one day kind of going towards a role that's more fitting of your interests.
That's great. I love the resources. Thank you.
I want to tie in the comment about checking in with your manager to make sure that your manager is okay with doing the work. With another question we got, which is, in a remote internship, do you ever have trouble keeping track of what you're meant to be doing sometimes? Which, you know, could tie in together. And I don't know that that is exclusive to a remote internship. I think that, you know, when you're in the office and you're, unless you're staring at the same screen as your manager, you don't always know, they don't know what you're doing, you don't know what they're doing, and they don't necessarily know, or you don't necessarily know what they want you to be doing. I want to throw that to Anita and to the panelists.
Anybody have any insight from your remote work experience? How do you keep track of things?
I would say it's extraordinarily hard to stay concentrated for me, but as George said, management is a key aspect of staying on track with your responsibilities. I live also in a single room apartment with other roommates, I guess, and so that space for me is limited. So if you're able to commute somewhere closer to your school, or you have a cafe or something, I always found changing an environment helps extraordinarily in just focusing, because it's hard to play, work, sleep in the same place. So change of environment definitely helps, in my experience at least.
Great tips. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. I agree with Bart. And I think when I was at Columbia, I attended some, I don't remember what they called them, but it was like kind of like professional development, like electives. And there was one on sleep hygiene. And they mentioned like it's very unhealthy to do different things in the same room, like work. I mean, I don't think many people have the option to not keep their desk in their bedroom, but there are certain things that you shouldn't mix, and that's definitely one of them. Like I would say work and sleep. So I definitely agree with Bart there. And another thing is that from my experience, when I was at Flextra Power, a lot of the during COVID, but also a lot of the time in general, I was remote, and yeah, it's very hard to stay on task. And that was part of like my mistakes or things that I learned through maturing in engineering. And one huge tip that I have that I couldn't emphasize more is handing in something half-baked is better than handing in nothing. And that's something that I struggled with a lot, was feeling like I just didn't complete the work enough. Wasn't ready. I didn't work on it enough, and it wasn't going to suit the standards of what I was tasked with. And that's not true, because just communicating to your manager what you're able to do is really all you need to do. You don't have to worry about not handing in something exactly how your manager wanted it, because I mean, this is like, let's say it could be Tuesday and you still have a few more days to work on it. You could, and like maybe one 30-minute session on Zoom could kind of clarify whatever was bothering you. But instead of doing that, you could kind of overthink it and then struggle with, considering that it's not done. That's what I used to do, and that was pretty rough. So I would say that's like one of the biggest advices I could give.
Janvi, there was a question directed to you specifically around conversion to an internship. Not sure if you had a chance to already answer that privately or want to answer that now.
If it's okay, I would like to answer it because is it okay?
Please.
They do convert. They did for me, so I'm assuming they do. They are honestly just really nice people, and they're very, very hardworking. So they also are looking for hardworking people who are, who communicate well and who are also kind of innovative. Like when you're working with cell lines, it almost never goes according to the way you want it to. So there's just a lot of troubleshooting that is involved, and there's a lot of thinking out of the box. And as long as you do that, I'm pretty sure they'll convert.
Speaking of converting, anyone have other advice on how to approach your manager? As we're halfway through internships right now, as the internships keep proceeding, if you're interested in staying on, how to manage that?
My biggest tip in this area is that you have to be your own advocate. Because at the end of the day, would it be very nice if at the end of your internship, they said, hey, we really liked you, we want you to stay? It would, right? But you can't always bet on the option that that's going to happen. So if you really like the position where you're at, and if you want to stay there, I really beg you guys to speak to your supervisor, bring up the idea of continuation, and at least get the ball rolling so that by the time when your 10 weeks end, you have at least a foot in the door, at least for the conversations if you're going to stay or not.
Super smart.
I
These
would
are
pick up on
not
that.
guaranteed the internship to full time. So it's up to you to raise the question largely.
I would pick up on that and say, in general, you need to be very careful that you're not seen as over aggressive or pushy, but in general, advocating for yourself is critical. And I think a lot of times managers don't necessarily appreciate that you might have different views for your career than what they think. And by being more open and communicating, if it's done in the right way, which is critical, you can put yourself on a path to get that promotion or to do other work that you're interested in. I think with converting from your internship to a continuing role, one thought is, if there's work that you see that the company could benefit from, you could raise that as a possibility. And it might be something that your manager hasn't thought of. And you could say, there's this work, I'd love to stay on part-time, or I'd love to continue full-time if that might be a possibility, and do this work. And again, if you do it in a polite and not assuming way, they could appreciate it. And the worst that happens is they say, sorry, we don't have the funds for it, or we can't make that happen. But it can't hurt to try. And that's especially if you're going back to school and they don't know that you'd be able to keep working during the academic year. You want to be open about where you stand and what you're up, what your capabilities might be.
Just to add on, I always considered internships as a very long interview. And we always go to like 2 or 3 interviews for a job, and then we decide which one we want to go with at the end of this interview. So it's like you always give your best, you always show up on time, you always work hard, and at the, like you're going into an interview pretty much every day. And towards the middle of the internship, as if you see that this is a position that you want to keep working more, maybe that's a good time for you to actually show to the company that you are needed there, and you would be a good addition to the company, and like how you can help the company and how the company can help you at the same time, like a mutualism. I believe so.
Good thoughts. Very good thoughts. We're actually nearly out of time. I want to get you out on time. So if anyone wants to type in the chat any final advice, requests for help, resource recommendations, feel free to light this chat up. Or if you just want to say thanks to all the panelists